Oh, all right. Now we're recording. So welcome everybody. And as I said, Danny may be joining us a little bit later on. I know he has a class tonight at 7. I hope you're keeping in contact with him with your projects. He seems to be very pleased with the work that you're turning in, so just keep that up. We are about a third of the way into the course. So I went today on Blackboard and looked at what's been turned in and how much stuff is there. I've graded everything that's been turned in, and it looks like everybody is moving along, progressing quite well. So keep up the good work with that. Anyone still not in school? Everyone's gone back in my South Carolina friends, you've all gone back? Everybody?
Yes, we're going back.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Got a lot of time to make up. North Carolina, there's a couple of school systems on the coast that are still out, and I know they're going to be out for a couple more days. So we'll play it by ear. I'm sure they're playing it by ear. Good news, though, the North Carolina General Assembly helped out. I don't know if South Carolina is doing anything similar. So, all right, I'm going to share. All right. I am, first of all, going to do a quick little, bring us up to speed with our course. A couple of things that I've added to 605 Blackboard Shell that I want you to be aware of. I went back and added some dates to these class sessions. There is one that we're not going to have a class session, of course, on Thanksgiving, but that's pretty much the only week that we don't have something scheduled. And this may be slightly different from what you got from that first welcome email from me. So don't go back and look at it, because this is the news. So don't go back and look. But we are off on Thanksgiving, and we do hope to certainly have to finish up by the 13th, because by the 15th of December I have to turn in grades. You're progressing along well with that, though. But I did add some dates, so we'll kind of keep a look at that. The other thing, by the way, we are in week 6, of course. Occasionally, I told you I would add something. I did add a new article in here. And again, when I add something, really read it if you want. There's no test, no quiz, no discussion board or anything about it. But whenever I find a great article, I try to share it with you. And this was one from Education Week, 3 questions about the research on educational leadership. So I thought that was quite interesting. So look at that. What else? I think that was it. Just want to call your attention to next week, about October the 11th. We are going to be talking quite about SMART goals. I've also added a neat little article here where it can talk to you about how North and South Carolina compare to other schools across the nation. So you should begin to look at that. So any question about where we are on Blackboard, any question about any of your assignments or anything that you're doing that you might need me or Danny to look at, because it seems like you're doing a great job on it, turning stuff in and keeping on top of stuff. So any questions? Okay. You're on mute.
There you go.
There you go.
Is there a specific date that we need to turn in CAP to
Danny?
That's the final one.
Yeah, well, everything has to be graded by December the 13th, so I'll certainly shoot for well before that, maybe into mid-November, but you might want to talk with Danny about that, because he's going to be the one who, and you can shoot him an email or something, because he'll be the one that may be pushed up with the schedule, because I know he teaches a couple of classes. So that's a good Danny question if he comes on board, or if not, just catch with Danny.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right. Well, to start us off, last week you talked to an assistant principal, and I'm sure this is sort of sometimes like what they may have said their week may have been like, not only for the principal, but for the assistant principal, and I dare say sometimes too, the assistant principal keeps those angry phones only to 5 by taking care of a lot of the things. I hope you enjoyed that experience with your assistant principal. They have a wealth of information that they can share, and sometimes, they need a little pat on the back, because they are oftentimes the one who gets all of the, what we used to call them is the 4 Bs: buses, books, rooms, and butts. Now, we don't do butts anymore, but that's oftentimes what they get stuck with. So we probably ought to modify it to the 3 Bs, but they need encouragement, and I certainly hope they appreciated that opportunity to have a conversation with you, someone who may be taking an interest in their careers. All right, tonight we're going to talk about effective leadership and collaboration. So I have put together a PowerPoint for you on effective leadership, and it will be post it on the website a little bit after this. So, and I hope this is a little bit interactive. So when you come to a slide that says your turn or something like that, I'm looking for some answers to type in. So, all right. Oh, let's see. All right, effective leadership. This is what what we've been taught. What you have been reading about this week. So, did I skip over? Oh, here's your first leadership trait exercise. What I'd like you to do is, and you can just mentally think about a leader who you really do admire. Someone, it could be in education, it could be someone in another field. But what are some of the traits that they have? What are some of the traits that they've experienced? So just think of this in your head. But of that great leader, and it could be someone on a national level, someone on a state level, maybe just actually someone in your building. But are there any particular traits or skills that they have that really stand out above the rest? And it would be great if this could be something that's kind of personally touched your life. Anybody got one? A skill or trait that they had that was super, kind of stood out about them?
You want us to say it?
Pardon? Go ahead.
Are we still thinking?
All right, I'm going to give you another 2 seconds to think, and then you can say it.
Okay.
I didn't. Oh, you're waiting on me to give. Okay. I don't know how to play this game. All right, give me some traits. What are somebody you really admire? You don't have to tell me their name, but what were some of the things that really stood out about them?
They were genuine.
Genuine. How do you know that?
Because they want to build a relationship with you. Like they sit and they listen to you and they talk with you.
Was there any body motions that go along with that? Like, do they nod? Do they lean in? Because a lot of times your body language is speaking a whole nother language that your mouth may not be. But I would assume that's a part of it, isn't it? You don't want to have someone standing there with their hands folded. And all right, anybody else?
I had an AP who was I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Who was a very active participant in my PLC. He would always give feedback and suggestions, and he wasn't there just to watch.
All right. So he walked the walk,
Mm-hmm.
kind of. All right. Anyone else?
Just to piggyback off what she said, I had a principal that he walked the walk. The whole school culture changed. It had gotten to the point that teachers weren't really going home because they were so involved, not because of his leadership as, being a micromanager, but because everybody was invested in the school.
All right. Well, I love working for people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? All right. We'll move on. The theories of effective leadership, there are two really great early theories, and we kind of touched on this a little early in the course, but the first one is the great man theory. This was really prominent for a long time ago. This is also can kind of be like born that way. You were born to be a leader. And these are, according to the theory, these are exceptional people. They have all these qualities. They're born with them. They're destined to be great. When I think of this theory, I think of a class society like England, where a certain number of people went off to be the leaders, a certain number of people became the workers. Also in the United States, somewhat of a class society. And that's not to say, but I was just kind of reflecting when I hear this theory. I don't necessarily believe in this one. There are some people who are probably put in a better position in life to be a leader. Not necessarily, because I've also seen some people who you would think come from the most pedigree families who are going to be the natural born leaders who are horrible at it. I mean, just because you have money, wealth, and famous family doesn't mean that you're going to be a great leader. So that's one, born that way. The other one is a trait theory. And this is the one that I particularly like because I think it gives hope to the rest of us who aren't born with the silver spoon in our mouth. And that is that it's something that can be learned and practiced. And this theory basically just says that all of us have some qualities of leadership. And it's whether or not we develop them and how we train ourselves and how we're patient and how we practice it. We don't always get it right the first time, but through training and through practice, we can become better because in practice and in training, we begin to learn from our mistakes and we become better at it. We kind of know what to expect next time, how to react next time. So these are the two early theories. And I particularly like the trait one. Not really big on the great man. And it was called Great Man because guess who was eliminated from it? 51% of the population. All right. Now, I asked you for some of those traits, and here's some that have been identified by the researchers that said these are what really makes effective leaders. One, they're adaptable. I think that may have been one that we talked about. They can turn on a wheel. They know exactly what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and if something's not working, they can adapt to the new reality. They know their social environment. The assistant principal that you talked about that walked the walk, that person probably really understood that it's important to be a part of the team. They're ambitious, they are assertive, they're cooperative, they build that relationship. I think that walk the walk is important when you talk about cooperative. They don't just stand above and say, you guys do this. They can pick up the broom when there's a custodian missing. They can pick up the trash outside when they see it. You just notice these things about people. They take great pride in what they do, but they're also cooperative. They'll jump right in if you need help with something, and you don't have to ask them. If they see that your kids are lining up in the cafeteria and you've got your hands full and the teacher assistant's not there or something, these are the folks who kind of just step up and let you know that they value being a part of your team. And that's the way they look at it. They look at it as being a collaborative, cooperative team. They are decisive. They make those decisions when they have to. They're dependable. You can depend on them. Like you said, Ms. Mason, they've got your back. You can depend on them to be there for you when you need them. Now, that doesn't mean that if you do something really outlandish, they're going to, you're going to be able to depend on them to get you out of it. But I do think you'll be able to depend on them to help you get around or to help you be in a much better position. They're dominant. They really have that great desire. They're energetic. They have a high interest level, persistent, self-confident. Stress, they handle it well. Have you ever seen those people who doesn't seem like a thing in the world bothers them? Don't you wish you could be like that? But that's a great leader because they are not ignoring what's stressing them, but they have chosen a way to deal with it. Because when we deal with stress in some of the ways in which I deal with it, maybe you deal with it, it only makes matters worse. So these people have got that toleration for it. And they assume responsibilities. That means when something works, they throw the credit out to the people who helped make it happen. But when something bad happens or something didn't work out right, they don't blame it on the team. They say, hey, I'm the leader. I did it. As far as some other skills, they're clever, they're intelligent, they're funny sometimes. They understand the big concept, they're creative. The next fourth one is probably very important in a school setting. You've seen that great leader take a parent that you walk down with that is as angry as you've ever seen someone, and you can see them take that person, and by the time they come out, your decision still stands, but that person is not that angry, hateful person that was standing before you not too many minutes ago. So they have that skill. They're tactful, and they are diplomatic as well. And these are really great people to work with. They're a great communicator, whether it's through their written language or whether it's through the verbal. These are the people who can talk on the spot. They can, and it's not lying. They simply can take a situation and they can talk through it and help people to understand it better. They also embrace the idea of a group mentality. They understand that sometimes groups work best and that people need to have, and they have enough information where that group can be successful. And we talk about collaboration, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but they do know how groups work. They're organized. Did I misspell organized? I did indeed, didn't I? Yep, I'll fix that. Thank you for catching that, whoever that was. They are persuasive and they are socially skilled. These are folks who can fit on any side of the railroad track. They can talk at the country club, or they could talk down at wherever, Walmart, wherever people gather. They are as comfortable in one social situation as the other. Now, thinking back to those two theories of born this way and also of learning these behaviors, do you think the person who was born this way is going to be comfortable with some of these skills here? If I'm entitled to be the leader because of where I was born or who that silver spoon in my mouth, that's why I don't really buy that theory, because these are the types of things that I think make great leaders. And sometimes people, sometimes they are comfortable doing that, but sometimes they are not. So that's what research, but there's one more page on this. But These people are also have integrity. As you mentioned, Ms. Dixon, they're honest, they're compassionate, they have humility, and they understand others. They really do have that people person, Janet, that they understand and are people. That's what I want to say. They're just people. Anybody want to add to that exhaustive list of some of the things that these great leaders are? Did we miss anything on those? That's an exhaustive list. Is that a chat? No chat yet. I'm getting better at this, Jason. I'm checking my chats. All right. Now, in Hersey and Blanchard, they introduced us to the situational contingency, maybe a while back, leadership style. And basically, it's from the 70s and 80s, still relevant today, though. But they have three motivations of competency, motivation, leadership style. And then you can, in the area of competency, these are people who, of course, they know what they're talking about. You have low competency. Well, I'm sorry, this is when you're dealing with people who have low competency, some competency, high competency, and high competency twice. The motivation level, and then the leadership style that's most appropriate for dealing with someone who has a low competency and a low commitment. Have you met people like that in your building? People who they're not the best at what they do, nor are they willing to get help, or are they motivated? Well, the best thing, according to Hersey and Blanchard, is you tell them what to do. You don't give them the option of being coached or anything else. Now, if they are somewhat competent, willing to learn, have some ability, some coaching will work. If they're really competent, they've got good commitment, supportive. But if they're just high flyers, high competent and high commitment, you kind of just delegate them and then watch them and observe them. So this is Hershey's model, Hershey Blanchard's model, kind of in a nutshell in a chart. I've seen all four of those types. Have you? I have. All right. Another thing where you got to answer me, and I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it. Think about an experience where you've been asked to be the leader and you've had the authority to resolve an issue. How did you know you had that authority? All right. First of all, think of a situation where you were the leader and you could solve the problem. It may be because your mom, it may be because you're chairman of the school improvement team, it may be because you are in some leadership capacity. All right, so think of a situation. Now, how did you know that you had that authority? And then how did you know all right, but back up. The question is, how did you know you didn't have that authority? So the situation is you don't have the authority, but you are the leader. How did you know you didn't have the authority? Now you got to change your situation, don't you? So go back, think of a situation where you are the leader, but you don't have the authority to resolve it. A problem. Let me give you an example for me. All right, suppose I am here. I'm a professor, a teacher, but I run into, and I want to add something to this shell for you all. But when I ask, can I add something to the Blackboard shell, they say no. All right. So how do you know that you don't have the authority? One, it's because someone tells me I don't. And the other is I usually go to my coach or my mentor to help me resolve the problem in some other way. So in your situation, is there something that you did differently? Anybody want to tackle that? No one wants to tackle that question. All right, we'll move on. You don't have to. I'll just talk to myself. All right. So the last part of this presentation is on how to improve your leadership styles. And this is something that I hope that you all will take to heart. I hope it's something that you can practice with a lot of regularity. One, you've got to understand and identify the skills that you need to be effective. You've got to have those. Then, once you have identified the skills that you need, and basically there's a lot of leadership assessment quizzes and things out there that you can look at. So, I'd encourage you to take one. There's one that I really like called True Colors. Any of you familiar with that one? Colors? All right, I'll bring it up next month and we can look at it and I'll show it to you. But basically kind of figure out the skills that you need and then develop an action plan within your own mind, or if you want to put it down on paper, about how to develop those. Then the best thing to do as you are in a working environment is to go ahead and try to get that feedback from your colleagues, supervisors, tutors, students. How are you doing in that particular leadership role? try it out in different environments. You don't necessarily have to do it at a school setting. Of course, you can always take on some additional responsibilities if you have time to do that. And then, of course, to reflect on it. The most important thing I think you can do in developing your leadership skills, though, is to find that person you thought of the first time, if they're around, and to find them and use them as a mentor. Ask them, can they be a mentor for you? And learn from the positive role models. And of course, there's just a wealth of, if your school system or district will do it, there's just a wealth of leadership opportunities and training out there that you can plug into. So, the last part of this is to talk about accountability, and this is all about effective leadership, responsibility, and authority. Accountability, because all of these traits go with being the leader. You're accountable, you're responsible, and you do have some authority. So accountability is basically being liable, being the person it answers to. And the responsibility kind of goes with that in that you are the person, the buck stops with you. You're the person responsible for the end product and how you get there as well. So this is very key, and I hope that you'll remember this point, is that a good leader accepts responsibility. And that means that when you give credit to others, when things go well, have any of you served for a principal or for an assistant principal, someone who maybe thought of the idea or who really deserves the credit, but they will never accept it? They'll say it was a team effort, or, you know, someone out here helped me with it. Have you served under that? How does that feel when you are part of that team with that person? Oh my God, doesn't it? I mean, because the opposite would be that person who always claims credit for the team's effort. And that, I would never want to be on that team. I'd want to be on the team with someone who says, well, it wasn't me, it was the team. And because naturally when people want to give credit, they tend to go to the leader because that's the natural person. So a great leader, of course, is someone who just says, we're all responsible for it, and delegates that. On the flip side of that too, it's a sort of person who will say, you know, it's all my fault. I didn't understand the instructions. I didn't do it well. So when you fail, that's kind of my responsibility. Have you served for someone like this? Shake it, nod of heads. Have you served for, is this someone that you'd like to work with? I mean, to me, that would be the ultimate leader who would be someone I'd want to meet with, I'd want to work for. Now, accountability, it's not fair to hold people accountable if you're not giving them full authority. So you can't hold me accountable for this project if you're not giving me the authority to direct the project and all. So just remember that accountability is important as far as being the leader. Authority is also the power to influence. It's the command, thought, opinion, and behavior. So you have great, awesome authority. All right, I'll leave this slide on effective leadership, that's all right, with the key leadership responsibilities. And these are the things that you will do once you become that sitting assistant principal or that principal. You'll guide and you'll coordinate your team, you'll encourage teamwork, and you'll motivate your individuals. Of course you'll do that. You're also responsible for providing the structure, setting up the mission, the purpose, the objectives. You'll clarify the working methods, how you do things around here, how you want it done, what kind of format you want it reported back in. You'll focus, you'll monitor the performance, and then you'll give great feedback. Perfect leader. So that's some of the responsibilities. Any questions on effective leadership? And this again refers back to the Hershey-Blanchard report. All right. Then let's turn our attention to collaboration, unless I have any questions. Are you even awake tonight, guys? Everybody's awake? All right, I know it's Thursday and one more day before the weekend, but I'm glad you're awake. All right, collaboration, the last part of what this chapter was about. And the top question, of course, is can collaboration be taught, or is it something that you are born with? I believe collaboration can be taught. I believe that collaboration is something that you can model, and someone who doesn't collaborate well can come along. I've seen it more than once in my career. You know, yes, you're going to have those people who don't want to collaborate. They don't want to be a part of this. What's the first thing that I usually hear whenever, as a superintendent, we initiated something new? And you may have used this. If you have, you understand it. But we've done that before. We did that 5 years ago. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. Those folks can be won, I think, and you probably have been on that side where there was something initiated and you decided, I'm not so sure. but your collaboration was one. So I believe collaboration can be taught. Collaboration, of course, is just basically getting individuals or groups to work together to obtain a goal. So it's an important objective of a school system. It's an important objective of the school. And as you as a leader, it will be an important objective. So what makes people want to collaborate? Pleasure, active participation, and a wish to be recognized is what research says. So that's why people want to be a part and want to collaborate. For the pleasure of being a part of a team, for to be a part, an active participant, and for the wish to be recognized when something is successful. There are a lot of barriers to collaboration, and as a school principal or assistant principal, you're going to have to overcome many of these barriers, and you're going to have to address them with your staff. So you might as well know what they are. There are a lot more barriers to collaboration than there are reasons to collaborate or motivators to collaborate. Those motivators to collaborate have to be very, very strong. You've got to have a sense of a great culture, a great team. You want to be a part of this great place we call Roseville Middle School. You've got to have an opportunity to want to be involved, because these are the barriers that people are going to give you when you become an assistant principal or a principal. Number one is the knowledge is power. There is, you know, as in your current teaching role or in your current role, that there are people in your building who know a whole lot more than you do. There are people who get information a whole lot sooner than you do. And information is extreme power. And if you're in a situation where you become the leader, it is important that people all know the same thing. You can't have favorites. You can't have some people who know what you're thinking or what you're planning to do, or who know all the details. You've really got to provide a transparent understanding of this is what we're doing, these are the facts. So knowledge is power. And people who don't feel like they have all the story or the whole story are not going to be as collaborative as they can be. That's why tell the whole story. Put it out there. Tell it all at once so that everybody knows. Now, if you work through a school improvement team, that's the appropriate place to do it, but don't let it die there. It needs to also go to the full staff. A lot of people will resist you and resist being a part of that collaboration you're trying to have in your school because they have a fear of change. This usually affects our older teachers, but not always. Some of our younger teachers have a fear of changing too. You've been teaming with that teacher who's been there for a number of years and who really doesn't want to do anything different. They're so comfortable every year going to the file cabinet and pulling out lesson plan for the first week of school. They're so comfortable with that. So, of course, getting them to become a part of a collaborative effort with you may be a little harder because they really don't want to change. They're so set in their ways. And but the reality is, and you know this, by your younger colleagues coming in, change is very constant. It is going on all the time, and it's going to continue to go on. Because if you're not changing, you're standing still, and standing still means you're going backwards. And so for these folks who are fearful of change, that's going to be a really big barrier for you when you get into your school and begin to try to make some improvements. The same thing about can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I will say this, and I'll say it, and please don't quote me to your principals. Yes, there are some old dogs in your building that you will never, ever change. And there are some who are never going to collaborate, who will never be a part of anything new that you try to do. But when you become the principal, identify them quickly who they are, or work around them, or work over them, because they are never going to change. And if they're no good, I mean, you don't go after them because they won't change if they've got good grades and good things like that. But if they're standing in the way of the progress of the school and standing in the way of a child's education, then, of course, the old dog needs to have a new dog pen. The other is the command and control. This is a very real barrier. And this is when, and again, we've all experienced this. This is when people will tell you that we're going to do this, or it's a foregone conclusion. They've already decided. This is what we're going to do. So there's absolutely no collaboration, even though they may say, I'd like to get your opinion on it. Have any of you ever served on a committee where they wanted your opinion and they didn't want your opinion? They just wanted to say they collaborated. Well, that's the same case. So that oftentimes will fall on you as the leader. And that also goes back to how much they trust you and how much you are authentic with them. So anybody have an idea what WIIFM means? No one? All right. No one knows. Okay, so it means, what is in it for me? What's in it for me? So that's always a barrier to collaboration, because people are going to look for something that's going to be something of importance to them, or what they perceive as important to them, or it's going to be a waste of time. So they'll ask, what's in it for me? Which means you've got to show them that it's got some relevance. It's got some relevance not only to them, but to this culture that they belong to. If not, it's a waste of time. We're not going to do it. A real big barrier is a lack of time. And this is true. And as a leader, you're going to have to find a nice balance with this, because your teachers, when you become the principal and the assistant principal, whatever your role might be, this is a real problem. You know it. A lack of time and a lack of resources could go with that too. People just don't have the time to do a lot of new things. So creatively, as an administrator, you got to find out, well, what can you give up? If it's that important to you and to the school, what can we give up to allow folks to have time to do it? Because that's a real barrier. People feel like, oh my God, you're just adding another thing to us. It's just another program with really nice names to it. And that will hurt you with the collaboration. They're not going to want to do it unless you've got some really good proof to them that, hey, look, I'm trying to take this away. This is going to be much better, but you got to take something away. You can't keep adding stuff to teachers. They just don't have enough time to do all that. The other barrier, of course, is the lack of support from the top. You probably have been in a situation where you get really excited about something. Maybe you bring something to the attention of the principal or the superintendent, and yeah, they kind of nod. Yeah, you go ahead and do what you want to do. Lack of support from the top. People aren't going to do it because they don't see any motive to do it, because they're not going to get the support. The other one, this is a little bit more interesting, because this is where you'll be when you become a principal and assistant principal, and that is a skeptical middle management. Because if there's a new initiative, the superintendent's all crazy about it, and maybe even the principal's crazy about it. Maybe you've got a good group of teachers in your school who are really crazy about this thing, and they all want to collaborate on it. But as assistant principal, you know who's going to end up holding the bag, who's going to have to do the management of it. So sometimes a skeptical middle management, which could be the assistant principal, could be the principal, could really derail something, because you understand who's going to have to make it happen. Superintendent can have all the great ideas in the world. He or she can give the great idea today. Tomorrow they walked away from it. The principal comes back from the principal's meeting. Wow, super great idea. Hey, Mr. Assistant Principal, Miss Assistant Principal, why don't you take it and run with it? Well, there you go. The ideas have to be not only support from the top, but meaningful support from the top. So skeptical middle management, those folks can kill it. If you have no tools, if you don't give them the tools, poor tools, or too many, that can overwhelm them. We've all been in workshops where it feels like you walk away and it's like an hour workshop, and you feel like you absorbed 2 or 3 days of staff development. So too many tools or no tools at all. If they're inadequately supported or they don't have the strategies, they can also be less likely to collaborate. Number 11 goes on with number 9, and that you can give them way too much information. It just overwhelms them. Some people need small doses. Most of us need small doses. Micromanagement is, of course, a killer of any kind of program. When the principal stands over you or the superintendent stands over you and says, hey, I'd like you to do this. We want to collaborate on this, but you got to do it this way, or you got to have this outcome. So micromanagement is certainly a barrier to collaboration, as well as a poor role model. If you've got someone who says, oh yeah, the principal's all gung-ho about let's be collaborative, and they are the worst collaborators in the world. I mean, they rule by edict. They rule by memo. They rule by putting a note in your mailbox. They have no collaboration skills. So that's a poor role model. If your job description is too rigid, or the for what they're asking you to do, that you don't have any opportunity for your creativity or for you to kind of rise to the challenge. Sometimes the language is a barrier, and sometimes the culture in which the school is in is a barrier. Geography can be a barrier, the fear of rejection. Who wants to try something if when you get rejected, you get slapped down in a public meeting, or everybody knows you were rejected. So again, those are all, and then of course, sometimes it's some legal stuff. So these are the 19 barriers that you are going to have to deal with when you become a principal or an assistant principal. You're going to have to understand that if you really want collaboration, which is the best leadership style for people who are motivated and for people who are competent, you're going to have to understand these barriers and see them when they happen, because a great principal obviously would know how to collaborate and get that collaboration. A gentleman called Stephen Dale put together something he called the art of collaboration. And he says, in order to get your teachers or to get your staff to really want to experience collaboration on anything, you're going to have authenticity, you're going to have to recognize them and reward them, you're going to have the trust, and you're going to have the passion. And he put together this neat little chart. I thought it was neat, called the art of collaboration. And the recognition, what he's saying is, and I agree, that these are the things that are going to get that collaboration that you want as a school leader. Because every one of the examples that you thought of that leader who you really admired, I doubt very seriously it was a dictator. I doubt very seriously it was the kind of leader who didn't encourage you, who wasn't authentic, who didn't recognize you, who didn't trust, and who did not have passion for what they were doing. So in your role, in your quest to become that next administrator, keep in mind that you need all these things. I think it's important that we know the art of collaboration. And you mentioned it earlier in the authenticity. People trust you. They know who you are. They recognize that you recognize them and you trust them. All right. So that's it. Tonight, we talked about effective leadership, gave you some strategies for, I hope, some leadership skills. We also talked about once you get into that leadership, how are you going to deal with the cooperation? And I hope that through reading along with the book that you're picking up some great skills on how to become a great leader and how to do that collaboration when you need it. All right, any questions on any of that? All right, I'm going to go back real quickly to Blackboard. I want to remind you next week, October the 7th, we're going to talk about transformational leadership. Again, there's this really great resource here that I put here for you where you can look at your different, look at the statistics for the different numbers for the public schools. You can pull out South Carolina, you can pull out North Carolina again. And what I want you to do is you are finishing up this program, and this is your last semester of it. You really need to be thinking about what next. When you start working on your doctoral degree, which I hope you'll consider Gardner-Webb University, you really should be creating a folder for what next and for the next professional steps you're going to take. Because I can tell you're all, if you wouldn't be in this program if you weren't lifelong learners. And of course, you're not going to stop at the master's level, I guess. You're going to want to go on into, or even just to add on to the master's, you want to go on to administration. So next week, we'll talk about transformational leadership. I have one more reminder for you, then I'm going to close it up or ask for questions. And if that is, oh my gosh, the chat, I got it. All right, anybody want to respond to Jason's chat or question? You all can see it, right? Everybody can see it? Jason, did you want, I mean, this is being recorded. That's okay with you?
No problem.
Let me ask Jason too. Jason, can you elaborate what makes it management versus leadership?
Mrs. Brooks.
Do you want me to turn off the recording?
No,
No?
no, you're fine. I think, when I talked to my AP about his emphasis on leadership and management, and he said to me that 75% of the time he's a manager and 25% of the time he's a leader. And I kind of got thrown with that statement.
Well, okay.
Personally, I value leadership above management.
Okay. By management, you mean he or she is one who is more about turning in your papers on time, being on duty where you're supposed to be, making sure that the school operates, the schedules are maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. And as far as being a leader, is that a curriculum in a curriculum sense of someone who can come by and say, Jason, I noticed today that you were doing a section on something, and I've got this great resource, or have you talked to Steve down the hall? He did the lesson last week and I was in there and it was a great lesson. What?
Yeah, I think more it's about, when the leader is collaborative and it's kind of like not so much top-down management style where there's, democratic processes are involved. So
Okay.
it's kind of like a situation where there's no us and them.
Okay. How big is
'Cause,
your high school?
yeah, at high school. At my school, there's a lot of conflict because some teachers are not happy with the management style.
Well, let me ask you something, Jason. And again, this is just a question. What would your school be like if he or she was 100% leadership and not any management? Would that work for your school, or would your school become a zoo?
I think it would become a zoo, but I wasn't expecting that kind of ratio. For me, it leans too heavily onto one side than the other. I would go more with a balanced 60-40 or 55-45, something like that. Not so heavily leaning on management. This afternoon we had a FAC meeting, and one of the teachers was not happy because the management were telling her stuff that was not true, and she felt kind of beleaguered. She was under a lot of stress. Her blood pressure was going up, and when I was talking to her, it was clear from all the paperwork that she had compiled that none of it was her fault.
Okay.
So personally, I would say in that case, the managers could have sat down with her and tried to, investigate further without taking a top-down management style.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that? Any ask questions or something?
Jason, I also experienced the same situation with my assistant principal. I quickly realized that it was more about management. And I can say that because I see this every day. I'm also in the high school, and he's responsible for the buses, schedules type things. But when it comes to curriculum or instruction, when we talk about instructional leader, I have yet to see that component of him, okay? Even after I went and researched and looked at the job duties he had, I saw several things up under his job duty that led to leadership, but whether the individual was taking the initiative to implement those things, it was a different story. Now, I've also been at the same school, and I really had an assistant principal that was, I would say he's top notch. We did peer reviews, and he led instructional teams and things of that sort, but he still did some management, but I would say he was more of that individual that was developing the culture of the school and being there for everyone, including the students. But again, I experienced the same thing when I did my my interview, and when the individual started answering the question, it was more managerial type things.
So, Jason, do you think the principal knows that that's their style?
Well, I was elected as a representative from the Social Studies Department in the FAC. So I took that concern to the meeting today, and they are going to escalate it to the administration. But when I talked to the teacher this afternoon to get a little bit more clarity on what she was saying, I was kind of distressed because she was getting more sick, and it's kind of like, and it all started with the kids in the fourth block. They were acting up and not following the rules and stuff like that, and she was not getting any support from the administration, and that annoys me because I mean we are professionals, we are colleagues, and we should be able to work out a solution. You can't blame the teacher for something that goes wrong in the class. If the teacher is doing everything that's part of their job description, leading and following the playbook.
Right.
So I feel like the teacher should have gotten a little more support than an email that stated a lot of erroneous things.
Okay, and I agree with you. The only thing I would say is that just a couple questions, Jason, and you and I can carry on this conversation. The rest of you guys can. Well, let me do a real quick announcement before you go, if anybody wants to check out. But otherwise, I'm going to talk to Jason a little bit. If Jason, you can hang in there. Love for the rest of you to join me and have this conversation. But please add to your calendars, if you don't mind, October the 24th, which is a Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and I'll send you an invitation. The new dean of the School of Education here is having a Ask Dr. Bull session. I'll send you an invite, but it is on Wednesday the 24th at 7 p.m. and it's a chance for you to Zoom with the dean and to ask him questions. And if you haven't met Dean Bull, it would be a good session because he's quite articulate. He's a wonderful person to talk to, and I would hope that if you have a chance, you can Zoom in just to hear him speak and talk about his vision for Gardner-Webb University. If not, Jason, I really would like to keep our conversation going, but I recognize the rest of you haven't eaten dinner. You may want to slide out, but if you want to stay, feel free to. Jason, I am going to turn off the recording just for that purpose, but we'll see you all next week if you don't stick on with us. Good night. Jason, I'm going to turn off the recording. I think I am. There it is.